Yo, what is up, you guys? So I just did a Cyclops overview, so if you're new to Cyclops for any reason, go check out that video. I'll link it down below, and I'll also link this video in that other video's description, so that way you can find all the Cyclops video I'm going to be doing for the next 2 weeks, and I'll try to give you guys, at the end of next week, a whole bunch of Cyclops presets from all the videos and all that, because I really don't want to be just linking one preset in my Facebook download section. So, you know, after every video, you don't have to just download each individual one. I'll just put them all together in a folder, and then you can just download it next week. But anyways, so basically I'll be giving out all the presets I'll be doing videos on. But we're going to be making something in Cyclops that sounds like this. So let's just go over here and let me play what we'll be making. So we'll be making something like this. And so that's kind of like a background lead. It's just something that you wouldn't think you would use something like Cyclops for, a monophonic, typically bass-oriented digital synth, but you can make that kind of stuff and take advantage of a lot of Cyclops' cool features. So I would use something like this kind of in the same way that I'm using it here, just stack it over some chords, put one of these layers over some chords. So if I take out this layer and then just play this, and then add this back in, so it's really cool. So we'll just be making that. So let's get back into the Cyclops. So again, I'm just going to take it from an initialized preset. Well, I'm not going to actually move my settings around, but you should probably go into your preset finder and find the initialized preset, so you can just go look for it in either one of these windows. Scroll down around the eyes and you'll find an initialized analog. So I think this one right here. So I would, that's where I start from. That's where I initialize the whole preset from. So go there, do that, and let's get started. So for synth 1, we're going to set the phase stressor. So one of my favorite oscillator types in here. We're going to bring the mod all the way down, self mod to around, what's it say, -13%, and symmetry is at -48%, or 48%, just 48%. So when you look in this little blue box right here, you can see the exact values of the parameters I have set. So that might be a little hard to see, so make sure you turn on the 1080p so you can see that. And so, yeah, we just want our symmetry to kind of start a little bit later in the sine. So we don't want it to be too perfect. We just want to get a little bit on the edge of that. And we're going to bring this down an octave. And we're going to leave unison and detune alone. And now let's go into the analog sync. So we're going to select the analog sync right here. And we're going to select sawtooth for both the master and slave. And we're going to bring this down an octave as well. Bring the unison to around -0.05, and we're going to set the pulse wave to around -4, sync frequency around 63%, and the sync mix will be straight down the middle. So you notice these little lights are lighting up, so that means that there's modulation on all this. So I mentioned in the overview that a big part of what makes Cyclops very unique is all the modulation. So down here is all the basic filter and synth stuff that you are normally used to seeing in other synths. And up here is just where all the madness of this synth comes into play. So let's go into the routing next. So we're going to set this to serial 1, and we're going to bring the synth 1 and 2 mix to around, where do I have this? Around 65%. And then I introduced a little bit of amp distortion, so I selected amp, and I have this parameter of the distortion around 47%, and so that's just distortion that comes in between the filters. So I just like doing that. That's why I prefer using serial. And of course then we're going to distort everything else again after the filters. Again, we're over here, so I have a diode right here, and that distortion is set to 65%. So 65% seems to be a number that's being used a lot. And I'm not using any of the sub oscillators. So you notice that's down. You can add a little bit of it. Just again, this is a top layer, so we don't want to maybe add that those lower frequencies. So let's go back to the cutoffs over here. the filters, and let's look at the first one. So filter 1, low pass 2 pulse, so this one right here. No val mode here. We're gonna set the cutoff basically almost all the way down, but barely up, so around 7.5%. Reso around 72%, and dry wet is actually brought up to around 55%. And let's go into filter 2. So filter 2, I love comb filters, so of course we're going to select the comb filter right here on the bottom right. We're going to bring the reso up pretty high because I think that's one of the things that you got to do when you use a comb filter, crank up the reso a bit. So 69% for that, dry wet up all the way, and the cutoff is around 23%. So now we have basically the main chunk of this. So everything else we're going to do is now just modulation and effects. So let's go to the effects parameter here, the wheel of effects. And you notice that I have a number 8 reverb on every step of this. So the reason I did that is because I might have wanted to use the gator up here. So you notice I took out a few steps up here. So I have the number 8 reverb, and I have the dry wet down here. So right here you can set the dry wet for that. That's around 69% for the dry wet. So that's what I'm doing for effects here. Let's look now at over here. So this is maybe the part of the tutorial where you might need to do it yourself, where it might differ from mine, but that's okay. So we're gonna look at all these different modulation things I have going on. So in amount and sound, you really don't need to worry about those two. Those two really aren't doing anything. I'm not even using them. You can see they're not green lit, so that means they're not really going to follow anything here. And I also don't have the effects knob green lit on the play button. So the play button means that it'll play whatever I got going on here. So if I hold a note now, you'll notice that the FX knob will follow this. Or at least it should have. Oh, well, wrong knob. There we go. So, blah, blah, blah. So now if I hold that knob, FX knob is turning. So we're not even using that. So we don't have to worry about any of this. So we could just turn this off. Turn this off. I guess I have to clear it or something. Okay, now I have to send it to manual. Because it's not like the other knobs. You have more options here on how you can use this. So the only one we're going to really worry about is the wobble knob. So this might be hard. Just kind of get it as close as you can if you really want to be precise, or just mess around with it. Record whatever you want. So you can hit the record button, play a note, and then just turn this knob as you want. One pass, you'll get it the way you want it. But basically what I did is I just grabbed the wider brush, and I went kind of around halfway up and down a little bit, and I just kind of drew it in. There's really no reason on why I did certain amounts in certain places. It just sounded good to me, and that's why I did it. So now let's go over here into these other windows. So we're down on this side, so really we just have to focus up on what we got going on in here. So this window is where you assign your parameters to the modulation and the effects and all that stuff. So there's quite a few things that I did in the envelope, so I really don't have anything else going on in these other windows. So in sound, not using that. Stepper, it looks like there's a tiny amount of LFO. I'm not even sure if it's actually really that important. I don't think it is, but if you want to know, it's just the tiniest amount of an LFO on the mod 1 of synth 1, or the synth 1's parameter 1. So just a tiny amount, like around, let me see if I can get a number. Well, it's just a tiny amount, so yeah, let's go to the envelope now. So you might want to pause and just kind of copy all this. So just notice where everything's at. So you see where filter 2 and filter 1's cutoffs are. You can see where synth 1 and 2's first two parameters, or the third one as well, where those are kind of landed. And then what I did a little bit of envelope on the master volume as well, which really doesn't make sense. But I guess I might have gone confused this window with the wobble parameter. So let's now go over. So if you need to pause this and get those down. We're going to continue now to the wobble wheel and the wobble amount. So this is where you assign everything to this knob right here. And in a weird way, also this one, because we have two sides for the wobble amount. So we can have an A side and a B side. So right now, we're just sticking to an A side. So we don't have to worry about what's on the B side. I would recommend you just put some weird randomness on the B side and kind of blend between the two. But we're just going to leave it on the A side. So right here on the master volume, you can see I'm dragging this up, but it's probably better if I do something like this. So this is now going to be modulated by the Wobble, and we can see on the first parameter of synth 1, that is brought down a little bit, so use the -6 as a reference, almost barely touching that. Second parameter, which is our self mod, is going all the way up, and this third parameter looks to be is probably at default, so it's kind of hard to tell, but it is default. And then the mix of synth 1 and synth 2 is brought down a little bit less, so maybe around where -3 would be, maybe -4. And now let's go with synth 2's first parameter. So the first parameter would be our sync mix between the two sawtooths, and we're going to bring this a little bit past 12. And the second parameter, which is the frequency for the sync, is going to be around, I guess where -4 or 5 would be also. And then this is at default. Then filter 1's cutoff is a little bit past +6, so maybe +7, +8. These parameters are default. The filter 1 and 2 mix seems to be around -4 or 5. I mean, a +4 or 5. Positive. I don't know why I said negative. And so that's just basically the filter 1 and 2 mix. So we can modulate that as well between those two. And the last filter, you can see where the cutoff is for that. It's a little bit around -4, -3. And then the resonance, the reso, is brought up a little bit as well. So that is all our modulation. So now everything that we programmed here in this window for the Wobble button will now follow. Now all these parameters will follow this, and you'll see it playing here. So now if I hold a note, you'll notice the Wobble knob will turn according to that, modulating these presets. So it's kind of hard to understand, but if you get it, you're good to go. And so you can see that it's just going between those rates because that's what I have here. And so really that's it there. It's all about the effects. So because we did set some of the envelopes here, we do have to look at the envelope that I set here. So the attack is all the way down. Hold, I just brought up slightly to around 25 milliseconds. Decay is up all the way. Sustain is down all the way down. And release is around 110 milliseconds. So if you want to copy down the alpha and the step sequencer, I didn't use those, but you can go ahead and get those down. I didn't change anything else in settings. I did mention that I had a little bit of distortion here. Actually, we talked about that. Last things we could do is just set a little bit of glide on this, since it's kind of a top lead. It's nice to have a little bit of glide, especially with higher frequency notes. So around 52 milliseconds of glide, and it's on the first one finger, so not the two finger. And I brought the velocity down. This is actually kind of important, down to the hollowed out circle. So this is where it's at by default, and I have it now down here. So it's just a little bit more velocity. Attack is all the way down. So these two knobs are our main envelope of Cyclops. So we're going to leave the attack all the way down, and we're going to set the decay and release. Basically, it's just one knob. We're going to put that around 2.76 seconds. So 2.76. And that's really it. So now you have something a little bit like this. I'm playing it kind of low too. So pretty easy. So really you realize we're just taking advantage of a nice reverb, and we're just kind of putting together a nice little blend of everything else. And you can see my volume is around, my master level is around -11, so I do have some room to modulate the master volume and all that, and it's not going to, clip or anything, hopefully. I didn't really check if it was clipping, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't. And so once you're done, you just save the preset, so you can name the preset right here. You just call it, who knows, something like that. Save the author name, so if you want to write case save because it's a preset for me, or you just want to call it something that you'll remember, maybe your name is blah blah blah, something like that. So that's the author name, and then you can set a rating and all that. So once you save it, I recommend saving it into the folder that Cyclops will recognize, so you can find it in your library. So you just go to the save button, so right there. Not sure where it went. Let's try that again. Okay, that's what I was looking for. So this is the path you need to follow. So usually Cyclops will save after, or it'll set up the folder that you need in Documents. So Documents, Sugar Bytes Cyclops presets, add a folder in there of your own presets, and then you could just click save. And so when you're done and you want to recall these, you go authors, you go to whatever you saved it as. Authors is the easiest way to find it, so that's why it's important to label the author. So you see the 3 K-Save presets I've made so far. So hopefully by next week I'll have like 40 or 50 for you guys, because I just kind of got back into using Cyclops. I got a little bit bored of all my synths, so I started using Cyclops again, and it's been a good year since I've touched this plugin, I think. So I'm looking forward to doing a whole week of tutorials on this, or a week and a half, whatever. So again, thanks guys for watching, and of course let me know what else you guys want to see, and lates.